This is an os coxa, part of the pelvic girdle. The common name for this is a hip bone. The os coxa is actually three separate bones that have fused together during development. The three bones are this bone to the superior, the ilium, this bone in the inferior and posterior, the ischium, and this bone to the anterior called the pubis. What parts of the os coxa do you need to know? We're going to start with the parts of the ilium. At the very superior of the ilium, you will find the iliac crest. We know that this part of the ilium is the anterior of the ilium because of this rough structure here. This rough structure, which is the joint with the sacrum, is always going to be posterior. This structure here, where the iliac crest terminates and starts sticking out to the anterior, is called the anterior superior iliac spine. Here, where you see it stick out a second time, inferior, is called the anterior inferior iliac spine. You will see at the end of the iliac crest in the posterior, it also sticks out. This is called the posterior superior iliac spine. In this medial view, you will see this smooth section of the bone next to this rough section. This smooth section is called the iliac fossa. In the posterior, you will also see this large notch. This notch is called the greater sciatic notch. If we follow the greater sciatic notch to the ischium, the bone here in the posterior, you will see there's this part of this ischium that will stick out. This is called the ischial spine. You will see another notch, much smaller, inferior to this ischial spine. This is the lesser sciatic notch. If we turn the os coxa over, you can see in the posterior view that the ischium is quite rough and swells out to the posterior. This swelling in the posterior is called the ischial tuberosity. The ischium will continue from the ischial tuberosity towards the anterior through here. This section of the bone is called the ischial ramus. The ischial ramus will then continue to the pubis, which is this bone here, and this section is now the inferior ramus of the pubis. This up here is the superior ramus of the pubis. There are a couple of structures that are formed when all three bones fuse together. The first of them is this large socket that you see on the lateral view of the os coxa. This large socket is called the acetabulum. The second structure that you see is this large hole. This large hole is called the obturator foramen. How can you tell if this belongs to the right or left side of the pelvis? Remember this structure, the anterior superior iliac spine is always anterior. And this structure, the acetabulum, is always going to be lateral. So this structure should be in the pelvis, sort of like this. This particular bone belongs to the left side of the pelvis, so this is a left os coxa. Here we see a fully articulated pelvis. When you look at a fully articulated pelvis or pelvic girdle, you should also be able to see some additional structures. The first one is this structure here. This is the joint between the two os coxa bones. This joint is a cartilaginous joint. It is called the pubic symphysis. You will also see this imaginary line that goes around the pelvis like this. This imaginary line is called the pelvic brim. Below the pubic symphysis, you will see the pubic arch. You should be able to identify when the pelvic girdle is fully articulated whether or not this pelvis belongs to a male or a female. The thing that you really need to look for is the angle of this pubic arch. You can see with this pelvis that the pubic arch is quite narrow and very triangular. This pelvis belongs to a male. Compare it to this pelvis where you see the pubic arch is quite wide and very arch-shaped instead of triangular. This particular pelvis belongs to a female.